Greetings dear viewers, this is George from Ireland, and in this video I'm going to explain why I wish to promote friendship between Muslims and those of other faiths and those of no faith at all. Why am I particularly talking about Muslims? Well, there's an awful lot of anti-Muslim prejudice in the world. Now I know there's prejudice towards all sorts of ethnic and religious groups, but Muslims face particular hostility. Now, are there bad Muslims? Yes, there certainly are, as there are bad people who subscribe to every religion. Could there be proportionately more bad people who happen to subscribe to this religion than others? Indeed, that's possible. And I'm arguing that that's not mainly for religious reasons. It's often economic, political, social, national, territorial disputes and so forth, which leads people to have some bigoted views and to behave cruelly towards others. So Muslims certainly don't have a monopoly of that. And Muslims are the main victim of ISIS, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban and so on, who tyrannize moderate Muslims. There was that monstrous terrorist attack in Egypt the other day, 300 Muslims murdered by ISIS. It happens a lot. When bombs go off in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Iraq and so forth, in almost every case the majority of people killed are Muslims. So Muslims have every reason to be against Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, ISIS and those of their ilk. So there are 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, something like 20% of the world's population, and growing fast. This faith includes every sort of person in terms of attitude and personality. So every sort of ethnicity is amongst Muslims. Of course, ethnicity and religion are not the same, but a lot of Islamophobes don't grasp that. So what is Islamophobia? There is reasoned criticism of Muslims as individuals or Muslim governments, Islam as a whole, and people rightly excoriate Al-Qaeda and its kindred organisations. That's not Islamophobia. What is Islamophobia is a prejudice against Muslims for being Muslim, just for saying that he or she is a Muslim, just for reading the Quran or doing completely innocent things. Thinking that they must be bad, they must be distrusted, they should be mistreated on the grounds of their religion. There are Muslims in every country in the world. Admittedly, they're not a significant number in some countries. So what is Islam? Well, obviously it's the belief that Allah is the only God and Muhammad is his prophet, the last and greatest prophet. Incidentally, I'm not a Muslim, nor do I believe in it. I have read the Quran cover to cover twice. I've lived in Muslim countries lots. I've been into mosques countless times. I've had Muslim housemates and so forth. So considering I'm a non-Muslim, I know quite a lot about it. There are the 5 pillars of Islam in no particular order. There's a declaration of faith. There's giving money to charity, that's zakat. There's going on pilgrimage to Mecca once in one's lifetime, if possible, that's Hajj. There's fasting and Ramadan. There's prayer 5 times a day. So those are either laudable or else morally neutral. Donating money to the needy, how could that be a bad thing? Pilgrimage, well, I think that's morally neutral. At least shows some sacrifice with the faith. Prayer, at the very least, is good exercise because it involves stooping down, kneeling, standing up and so on. Fasting, well, could be good for one's health, but anyway, it requires a bit of self-discipline. So that's the core of Islam. None of that's bad. So it begs the question, why do people believe in a religion at all? Well, in the great majority of cases, they're brought up in that faith. So yes, it's possible to convert, but I would think close to 99% of people who belong to a religion are in the one that they were brought up in. And at some point, whole communities changed religion. Often these were sword point conversions. So Muslims are the same mixture of people as you'd find in Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism, or any faith. They're from the most morally upstanding people in the world to the most villainous. So people are not good or bad because they happen to belong to a religion, because they happen to believe in certain stories or observe certain rituals, patter out their orisons in a particular way. A lot of people are nominal Muslims, might call themselves Muslims, but never read the Quran, never go to a mosque or even pray at home, not observe Ramadan. They're Muslims of some kind. They're Christians like that, who are not churchgoers, have never read the Bible, that kind of thing. So there's a huge variety in one's level of observance. So you who are watching this, if you're a non-Muslim, you could have been born in a Muslim family, brought up in that religion, and you'd be exactly the same person. You'd have the same personality type. You would have different beliefs about the supernatural and say different prayers perhaps, maybe have different ethical beliefs, but essentially you'd be the same person. Can you not see that? You could have been born into a different ethnic group and you would still be you. People who happen to belong to the same category in terms of religion or race don't necessarily have a lot in common. Just because someone has about my same skin tone doesn't mean I'm very similar to him or her, or there's a lot about them that I like or indeed dislike. So there are some secular Muslim countries like Azerbaijan, Turkey and Kazakhstan. Remember, in Azerbaijan, yes, 90% of the people are Muslim, but it's not a religious state, and headscarves are not allowed in schools for pupils, no exceptions. So they are more stringently secular than countries such as the United Kingdom. So that there are significant Muslim minorities in places like Russia. So Islam can blend with secularism. There are Muslims who live a very modern, liberal life. There are Muslim women who play sport, who wear ordinary sports clothes to do so. There are Muslims who drink alcohol, go to nightclubs. There are even gay nightclubs in some Muslim countries, such as Turkey. Now, I'm no Quranic scholar, but because I've read it a bit, I know more than your average non-Muslim. And so Islam and Western countries are not inimical to each other. There are American schools in Saudi Arabia, for goodness sake. There are American schools in the UAE. I briefly helped out at one. There's an American university in Lebanon, and there was one in Egypt. So there are American Muslims and there are Western Muslims. It's not the case that never the twain shall meet. They can cross over. I mean, even the very word Western is very vague. It's scarcely defined. So Muslims in the Western world are nothing new. As I've said in a previous video, there were Muslims in Spain since the 8th century AD. They used to be the majority. Muslims in Bosnia for centuries. Muslims in the United Kingdom, well before the UK even existed, from the early 17th century. So criticism of individual Muslims, Muslim governments and so forth, all that is permissible. It's not Islamophobic. But just because someone happens to say he or she is a Muslim, to advocate mistreating that person is bigoted. And yes, it's true, in Muslim countries, non-Muslims are often discriminated against by law, and there are barbarous attacks against non-Muslims in some Muslim countries such as Pakistan. And many Muslims would abhor these crimes just as much as I do, and Muslim police officers or soldiers might be striving to prevent these crimes. So what one needs to do is to promote mutual understanding and amity between people of different faith communities. And only that way one can fight against extremism and build peace. I detest fanaticism of all kinds. And unfortunately, there's more fanaticism in the Muslim world than there seems to be in the rest of the world, partly because of tyrants in these countries, lack of access to free media and so on, and yes, some malignant preachers. Anyway, so as I say, there are terrorists who are Muslim, but often their motivation is political, their economic interest masquerading behind the faith, or they're fighting for a national cause over territory, things like that. Sometimes it's outright criminality. It's something to do with any ideology. And of course, there have been plenty non-Muslim tyrants of recent times. Look at Mugabe, so horrific he had to be deposed by his own right-hand man. So look at what President Putin has done. A couple of years ago, he opened a huge mosque in Moscow, the presence of some major Muslim leaders like President Erdogan of Turkey and the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas. And that's laudable, to show that Christians and Muslims can be dearest friends and trying to promote friendship and cooperation between people of different faiths. That is the way forward, and that's how one can build a happier, safer and more peaceful world.